The new CEO arrived at the tall office building on a bright Monday morning. He was a tall man with sharp clothes and a confident smile. His name was Mr. Harris, and this was his first day leading the company. Many employees were excited to meet him, but some were also a little nervous. The company had many workers from different backgrounds. Some worked in the offices, while others helped clean the building. One of these workers was Mrs. Jenkins. She was an older black woman who worked as a janitor. Mrs. Jenkins had worked in that building for many years. Every morning before most people arrived, she was already there, cleaning the floors, dusting the desks, and making sure the building looked nice. She was quiet and did her job well. Most people saw her as just the janitor and did not talk to her much. But Mrs. Jenkins knew a lot about the world. She had lived a long life and learned many things by listening and watching that day. As Mr. Harris walked through the office, he noticed Mrs. Jenkins quietly working near the elevators. He stopped for a moment and looked at her. Then he smiled and said loudly, "Good morning, Mrs. Jenkins." She looked up and smiled back politely. Mr. Harris then walked away to his office, thinking about how he wanted to bring some new energy to the company. Later that morning, Mr. Harris held a meeting. With his management team, he wanted to talk about diversity and teamwork. "Our company is made up of many different people," he said. "People from many places, with different stories and skills. But sometimes I wonder if we really understand each other." Some managers nodded in agreement. Mr. Harris had an idea to show the team how important it was to listen and learn from everyone, no matter their job. "I want to make a little challenge," he said with a smile. "See if Mrs. Jenkins can help us with something. She's worked here a long time, so maybe she knows more than we think." The managers looked surprised. "Mrs. Jenkins?" One said, "She's the janitor, sir." "What can she do?" Mr. Harris laughed softly. "Let's find out." Mrs. Jenkins to his office. She came slowly, carrying a cleaning cloth and a small bucket. Everyone looked at her. Some whispered quietly, wondering what was going on. Mrs. Jenkins kept her calm and respectful smile. "Mrs. Jenkins," Mr. Harris said kindly, "I have a little test for you. Can you translate a phrase for us from French?" He showed her a note with a French sentence written on it. "We have many people here from different countries. I want to see if you can understand this." Mrs. Jenkins looked at the note carefully. She did not say anything right away. The room grew quiet. Some people smiled, thinking this would be an easy way to show she could not do it. After a moment, Mrs. Jenkins looked up and said, "Yes, I can translate this." Then she spoke clearly and slowly, saying the meaning of the sentence in perfect English. Everyone in the room was shocked. Some gasped quietly. Others stared in surprise. Mr. Harris looked at her with new respect. "That's very good," he said. Mrs. Jenkins smiled gently. "Thank you," she said. "I have learned many things in my life, even if I did not go to school for a long time." The managers looked at each other. They had never thought about Mrs. Jenkins like this before. She was more than a janitor. She was a person with a deep story and many skills. Mrs. Jenkins then shared a little about her life. She told how she grew up in a neighborhood where many people spoke different languages. She learned some French and Spanish from her neighbors and friends. She explained that life had taught her to listen carefully and to keep learning every day. The room was quiet again. Everyone was listening closely. Mr. Harris felt a little embarrassed that he had judged Mrs. Jenkins too quickly. He realized that he had missed something important. Mrs. Jenkins said softly, "Sometimes people think that just because someone works quietly or looks old, they do not know much. But every person has a story and something to teach." Her words touched many people. Some wiped their eyes quietly. Mr. Harris nodded, thinking deeply, before Mrs. Jenkins left the room. Mr. Harris said, "Thank you for showing us that day. You taught us an important lesson." Mrs. Jenkins smiled and said, "I am happy to help." As she walked back to her cleaning duties, many people started to see her differently. They began to realize that every person, no matter their job or age, could surprise and inspire others. That day was a small moment in the company's story, but it started to change how people thought and treated each other. Mrs. Jenkins was no longer just the janitor who cleaned the floors. She was a teacher, a listener, and a wise voice in the office. The new CEO, Mr. Harris, knew that he had much to learn from the people around him. He was ready to listen. After the surprising moment in the meeting, the mood in the office slowly began to change. People started to look at Mrs. Jenkins differently, for many thought she was just the quiet janitor who worked in the background. But now, they saw her as someone with knowledge and stories worth hearing. Mrs. Jenkins returned to her cleaning work, moving carefully down the halls with her mop and bucket. Even though she kept to herself most days, now some employees greeted her with new respect. "Good morning, Mrs. Jenkins," said a young woman in the marketing department. Mrs. Jenkins smiled warmly and replied, "Good morning." Word of her perfect translation had spread around the company. Some employees, curious to learn more, began to ask her questions about the languages she knew and where she had learned them. Mrs. Jenkins enjoyed these small conversations. She liked sharing her life experiences and helping others understand things from different points of view. One afternoon, Mr. Harris, the CEO, invited Mrs. Jenkins to his office again. This time, he wanted to talk privately with her. When she arrived, he stood up and shook her hand firmly. "Mrs. Jenkins, I want to thank you again for your help the other day. You surprised me and the whole team," he said sincerely. Mrs. Jenkins nodded politely. "Thank you, sir. I am glad I could help." Mr. Harris looked thoughtful. "I realized that I judged you by your job and not by who you really are. That was wrong. I want to learn more from you if you are willing." Mrs. Jenkins smiled softly. "I am happy to share what I know. Life teaches many lessons." Over the next weeks, Mr. Harris asked Mrs. Jenkins to join some meetings and company events. At first, some employees were unsure about this. They whispered to each other, wondering why the janitor was suddenly being included in important discussions. But Mrs. Jenkins did not let that bother her. She listened carefully and spoke only when she had something helpful to say. At one of the meetings, the CEO asked Mrs. Jenkins to talk about her background and how she had learned to speak several languages. She told a story about her childhood in a small neighborhood. Many families from different countries lived close to each other. Children played together, shared food, and taught each other their languages, she said. "When I was young, I did not have many books or teachers. But I had friends who spoke Spanish, French, and even some English words I did not know. I listened carefully, asked questions, and tried to speak with them. Over time, I learned to understand many languages, even without school." The room was quiet as she spoke. People felt they were hearing something real and important. Mrs. Jenkins explained that learning did not stop with school. It was a lifelong journey. She encouraged everyone to be curious and open to new ideas, no matter their age or job. Many employees were inspired. A young man from the sales team said, "Mrs. Jenkins, you remind me that I should try harder too. Learn new things, even outside work." Mrs. Jenkins smiled. "Yes, learning helps us grow and connect with others." Mr. Harris watched this interaction carefully. He realized that Mrs. Jenkins was teaching more than just languages. She was teaching respect, patience, and humility. He began to think about the way people in the company treated each other, especially those who worked behind the scenes. One day, the CEO decided to invite Mrs. Jenkins to speak at a company-wide event about respect and teamwork. The employees gathered in the large meeting room, curious to hear what she would say. Mrs. Jenkins stood quietly at the front. She looked around the room with kind eyes. Then she spoke with a soft, calm voice. "I have worked in this building for many years," she began. "Sometimes people see me only as the janitor. They forget I am a person with feelings and stories. But I've learned something important. Every person here has value, no matter their job or age. When we respect each other and listen carefully, we all become better." She shared stories of times when small acts of kindness changed her day. She told how a simple thank you from a busy employee made her feel seen and appreciated. She talked about the power of listening and understanding others before judging. The room was silent. Many people looked thoughtful. Some nodded in agreement. Mrs. Jenkins' words touched something deep inside them. After she finished, Mr. Harris stood up and said, "Mrs. Jenkins has taught us a lesson we all need to remember. Respect and kindness make a strong company. Want us to work together to build a better place for everyone?" From that day, small changes began to happen. People started saying hello to Mrs. Jenkins in the halls. Some offered to help carry her cleaning supplies or brought her coffee. The office felt warmer and more connected. Mrs. Jenkins noticed these changes but remained humble. She continued to do her work quietly but with a new light in her eyes. She knew that sometimes it takes only one voice to help others see the truth. One afternoon, as Mrs. Jenkins was cleaning near the break room, a young woman approached her nervously. "Mrs. Jenkins, can I ask you something?" I said softly. "Of course," Mrs. Jenkins replied. The young woman smiled shyly. "How do you stay so calm and kind, even when people don't always treat you well?" Mrs. Jenkins thought for a moment. "It is not always easy," she said. "Wait till I remember that everyone has their own story. Sometimes people are busy or tired, and they forget to be kind. I try to be patient and remember that kindness can change a day." The young woman looked grateful. "Thank you. I will try to be more patient too." Mrs. Jenkins smiled warmly. "That is all anyone can do." Meanwhile, Mr. Harris began to change too. He asked the managers to find ways to include everyone in company activities. He wanted to hear from workers at every level, from the office staff to the cleaning team. He believed that everyone had something valuable to share. The CEO also started learning more about the different cultures and languages spoken by his employees. He asked Mrs. Jenkins to help organize language classes and cultural events. She gladly accepted. In these classes, Mrs. Jenkins taught simple phrases in French and Spanish. She shared stories about her life and encouraged people to learn from each other. The classes became popular, and many employees looked forward to them. One day, Mr. Harris said to Mrs. Jenkins, "You have made this company a better place. Thank you for your wisdom and your kindness." Mrs. Jenkins smiled quietly. "I am happy to help, sir." The story of Mrs. Jenkins spread beyond the company. Other offices and businesses heard about how the janitor had changed the hearts of the people around her. She became an example of how respect and learning can bring people together. Through patience, kindness, and sharing her knowledge, Mrs. Jenkins had shown that no one should be judged by their job or age. Everyone has a story and something to teach. As the months passed, the company grew stronger, not just in business, but in its spirit. The workers were more connected. The office felt like a community. Mrs. Jenkins kept working quietly, but now she was seen with new eyes, not just as a janitor, but as a wise teacher and friend. And in the heart of the company, the lessons she shared continued to inspire everyone. After several weeks, the company began to feel very different. The air was lighter, and the workers seemed happier. Everyone was talking more kindly to each other. This change was mostly because of Mrs. Jenkins. The old janitor had become a small, but powerful force that helped people see what really mattered. One morning, Mr. Harris, the CEO, walked through the hallways with a thoughtful look. He noticed how people greeted Mrs. Jenkins warmly. She smiled back, but she was still the same humble woman. She worked hard, never asking for praise, yet her presence had changed the office. Mr. Harris thought about what she had said in the meetings and events. "Respect and kindness make a strong company," she had said. He believed it was true, but he also wanted to do more than just say it. He wanted to show it. He called his management team for a special meeting. "We need to change how we work here," he said seriously. "It's not enough to have diversity in our company. We need to value every person's voice. That means from the janitor to the top managers. Everyone has something to teach us." Some managers looked unsure. "But how do we do that, sir?" one asked. Mr. Harris smiled. "We start by listening, create space for people to share, and we stop judging others by their job or age. We treat everyone with respect." He then announced a new idea. Every month, the company would hold a sharing day. On this day, employees could talk about their skills, stories, or anything they wanted to share with others. It could be a hobby, a life lesson, or a talent. Mrs. Jenkins was asked to help organize these events. At first, some people felt shy. They were not used to sharing about themselves at work. But Mrs. Jenkins encouraged them gently. "Your story matters," she said. "When we listen, we learn." The first sharing day was a small success. A few people stood up to talk. A man shared how he made pottery in his free time. A woman showed pictures of her garden. Mrs. Jenkins told a story about her childhood and how she learned languages from neighbors. Everyone clapped politely, and some smiled wider than before. After that, sharing days became a regular and much-loved event. People began to look forward to hearing from their coworkers. It helped break down walls and built friendships. The office became a place where people cared about each other. One day, Mrs. Jenkins noticed something else. Some of the younger employees looked tired and stressed. They worked long hours and seemed to forget about themselves. She quietly talked to Mr. Harris about it. "Sir," she said softly, "I see many young people working hard, but they need rest and balance. If we help them find that, they will be stronger." Mr. Harris listened carefully. "You are right, Mrs. Jenkins. We should think about wellness, not just work." He decided to start a wellness program for employees. There were breaks for stretching, quiet rooms for rest, and advice on healthy living. Mrs. Jenkins helped by sharing simple tips she had learned from her life, like the importance of drinking water and taking small walks. The wellness program was another step toward caring for every person in the company. It showed that the CEO truly wanted to change things for the better. Meanwhile, Mrs. Jenkins continued to teach language classes. Many employees came to learn new words and phrases, like some practice together during lunch breaks. This shared learning brought people closer and made the office feel like a community. One day, a young man named Michael came to Mrs. Jenkins after class. He looked nervous but excited. "Mrs. Jenkins," he said, "I want to thank you. You helped me feel more confident. I never thought I could learn French, but now I try every day." Mrs. Jenkins smiled warmly. "That is wonderful, Michael. Keep going. Learning is a journey, not a race." Michael nodded. "I also wanted to tell you that because of you, I started talking to people I never spoke to before. I think I understand them better now." Mrs. Jenkins felt happy. She knew that small steps like these could make a big difference in the world. At the same time, Mr. Harris was changing too. He often walked around the building talking to employees at all levels. He asked questions and listened carefully. He was learning that good leadership meant being humble and open. One afternoon, he saw Mrs. Jenkins cleaning near the cafeteria. He stopped and asked, "Mrs. Jenkins, would you like to join me for lunch? I want to learn more about your life." Mrs. Jenkins was surprised but pleased. "I would like that, sir." At lunch, Mrs. Jenkins told Mr. Harris stories from her childhood. She spoke about the challenges she faced and the lessons she learned. She talked about the importance of family, kindness, and never giving up. Mr. Harris listened with respect. He realized that Mrs. Jenkins had faced hardships, but never lost her spirit. He felt grateful to know her better. After lunch, he said, "Mrs. Jenkins, your story inspires me. I want to make sure our company honors people like you, hardworking, wise, and kind." Mrs. Jenkins smiled quietly. "Thank you, sir. That means a lot." Word of this lunch spread quickly. People were surprised that the CEO spent time with the janitor. It showed that he truly cared. Mrs. Jenkins' influence reached beyond her language skills and stories. She had helped change the company's heart one day. A problem arose in the office. A disagreement between two departments caused tension. People stopped talking, and the work slowed down. The CEO tried to fix it, but it was not easy. Mrs. Jenkins quietly stepped in. She invited the leaders from both sides to a small room. "Ask them to share their feelings and listen to each other," she said gently. "Sometimes we forget that behind every job title is a person. When we listen with an open heart, we find understanding." The leaders talked for a long time. They realized they had misunderstood each other. They apologized and agreed to work together better. After the meeting, the CEO thanked Mrs. Jenkins. "You have a special gift," he said. "You help people see the truth." Mrs. Jenkins shook her head. "I just remind people what they already know deep inside." The story of Mrs. Jenkins was becoming one of hope and change. Her quiet strength and kindness were teaching a whole company how to be better. In the evenings, as she finished her work, Mrs. Jenkins sometimes thought about the journey. From being invisible to becoming a teacher and friend, her life had changed. But she stayed humble and kind. She knew the real power was in respect. Respect for every person's story and heart and the company. Once just a place of work, was becoming a community built on trust and care. As the company grew closer, the changes inspired by Mrs. Jenkins became stronger. The atmosphere was no longer cold or distant. People smiled more, helped each other, and felt like they belonged. Mr. Harris, the CEO, was proud of this change, and he wanted to keep it going. One morning, Mr. Harris called a special meeting for all employees. The room was full of people from every part of the company: managers, office workers, cleaners, and support staff. The energy was high because everyone knew something important was about to happen. Mr. Harris stood in front and said, "Today we celebrate the people who make this company great. Not just the leaders or the managers, but everyone. Each person brings value and strength." He then looked toward Mrs. Jenkins. Mrs. Jenkins has been an important part of this journey. Her kindness, wisdom, and courage have helped us see what really matters. Mrs. Jenkins was surprised but happy. She stood quietly as the room applauded warmly. Some people even stood up to clap. Mr. Harris continued, "We want to thank Mrs. Jenkins by asking her to lead a new program called Voices of Our Company. This program will allow every employee to share their stories, skills, and dreams." Idea was simple but powerful. Everyone would have a chance to speak and be heard. It was a way to build trust and friendship even more. Mrs. Jenkins accepted the role with humility. She felt honored but also understood the responsibility. She wanted to help others feel as valued as she did now. The Voices of Our Company program began with small meetings where people could talk freely. Some shared stories about their families. Others talked about their hobbies or challenges they had overcome. It was a safe space for honesty and connection. One day, a young man named Luis, who worked in shipping, shared how he missed his home country and family far away. He spoke about his hopes and fears. The room listened quietly, and some people offered words of comfort. Mrs. Jenkins said gently, "Luis reminds us that we all carry stories in our hearts. When we listen, we open a door to understanding." These meetings became a place where people supported each other. Friendships grew and teamwork improved. The company felt like a family. Outside of these meetings, the CEO also made other changes. He improved wages and benefits for all workers, especially those in lower-paying jobs. He believed that respect was shown not just in words but in action. Employees noticed this and felt appreciated. Morale rose and work became more joyful. The company's success grew along with its spirit. Mrs. Jenkins continued her daily work, but also took time to mentor younger employees. She helped them with language, shared advice on life, and encouraged them to believe in themselves. One afternoon, a young woman named Tanya came to Mrs. Jenkins with tears in her eyes. She felt lost and unsure about her future. Mrs. Jenkins listened carefully. Then she said softly, "Tanya, life is not always easy. But remember, your value is not in what others say, but in who you are inside. You have strength even when you don't see it." Tanya wiped her tears and smiled. "Thank you. I needed to hear that." Mrs. Jenkins' kindness helped many people face their struggles with hope. Meanwhile, Mr. Harris learned a lot from Mrs. Jenkins. He spent more time talking with workers from all backgrounds. He wanted to understand their needs and dreams. One day, he surprised Mrs. Jenkins by inviting her to speak at a city event about community and respect. She was nervous but agreed. At the event, Mrs. Jenkins spoke with her usual calm and warmth. She told the story of how listening and kindness had changed her company. She spoke about respect, not just in words, but in everyday actions. Her speech touched many people. She became a symbol of hope, showing that one person's voice can make a big difference. Back at the company, Mrs. Jenkins felt proud but kept her humble spirit. She knew the work was not done. Respect and kindness needed to be part of every day. One day a problem arose when a new employee felt left out because of his background. The company quickly organized a meeting to talk and understand. Mrs. Jenkins helped guide the conversation. She reminded everyone, "We all come from different places, but we share one goal: to be treated with kindness." The new employee smiled, feeling welcomed for the first time. This was another small victory for the company's growing heart. Over time, changes inspired by Mrs. Jenkins created a ripple effect. The company became known in the city for its kindness and respect. Their businesses wanted to learn from them. Mr. Harris often said, "We owe much to Mrs. Jenkins. She showed us that respect is the foundation of success." Mrs. Jenkins, in her quiet way, said, "I only shared what life taught me. When we open our hearts, we find strength together." One afternoon, as she finished her work, Mrs. Jenkins looked around the building. She saw people smiling and working. Together, the place felt alive with hope. She knew that her small voice had helped make this change. It was a reminder that everyone, no matter their job or age, can inspire others. The story of Mrs. Jenkins was no longer just about a janitor to surprise the CEO. It was about a community that learned to care, listen, and respect, and it all began with a simple act, seeing each other as people, not just as roles or titles. Months passed, and the company was no longer the same place it used to be. It had become warm, friendly, and full of life. The workers, from the highest manager to the quiet janitor, felt connected like a big family. This change was a gift from Mrs. Jenkins and the lessons she quietly taught. Mrs. Jenkins still came in early every morning. She moved through the halls with her mop and bucket, but now people stopped to say hello. Some brought her coffee, others asked how she was feeling. She smiled gently, happy to be seen and valued. One day, Mr. Harris, the CEO, walked into the building early. He found Mrs. Jenkins near the entrance, cleaning the floor. He stopped and said, "Mrs. Jenkins, can I walk with you today? I want to talk." She nodded and smiled. As they walked together, Mr. Harris shared how much the company had grown. "Because of you, we learned to listen and respect each other. I see now that true leadership means caring for everyone." Mrs. Jenkins looked at him kindly. "Thank you, sir. But you had the courage to change, too." They talked about the future and how to keep the company strong in heart and spirit. Mr. Harris promised to continue building a place where everyone felt safe and important. The news about the company's changes spread beyond the office walls. Other businesses wanted to learn how respect and kindness could improve work and success. Mr. Harris and Mrs. Jenkins were invited to speak at meetings. In conferences, at one event, Mrs. Jenkins stood before a crowd of people. She spoke softly but with confidence. Respect is not just a word, it is how we treat each other every day. When we listen with an open heart, we build something strong. People clapped, moved by her simple truth. Back at the company, Mrs. Jenkins became more than a janitor. She was a teacher, a leader, and a friend. Employees asked her for advice and guidance. She helped solve problems and bring people together. One afternoon, a new worker joined the company. He was shy and unsure. Mrs. Jenkins welcomed him warmly. She said, "You are part of our family now. If you ever need help, just ask." The new worker smiled. He soon found friends and felt at home. As years went by, Mrs. Jenkins' story became a legend in the company. New employees heard about how a quiet woman changed the hearts of many. They learned that respect, kindness, and listening could change the world around them sometimes. Mrs. Jenkins sat quietly in the break room watching the busy office. She felt peaceful, knowing that her small voice had made a big difference. Mr. Harris often visited her. He said, "You taught me and many others the true meaning of leadership. You are a gift to this company." Mrs. Jenkins smiled and said, "I only shared what life taught me." Everyone has something to give. One day, Mrs. Jenkins decided to write a letter to the company. She thanked them for their kindness and courage to change. She reminded everyone to keep listening, to be patient, and to always respect each other. The letter was shared with all employees and became a cherished message. As the sun set outside the office building, Mrs. Jenkins finished her work for the day. She looked around at the people she had come to love and respect. Her heart was full. She knew that even though she was just one person, her words and actions could light the way for many. Her story was a gentle reminder that every person matters, and kindness is the greatest power we have. The company was no longer just a place to work. It was a home built on respect, hope, and friendship. all because one woman believed in the goodness of people and the strength of listening, and that made all the difference. If you want, I can help you with something else or expand any part further.